Hello, and welcome back to the Make Yourself Magic podcast. I hope you've all had a wonderful couple of weeks. I skipped doing last week's episode, and I feel some serious guilt around that. I want you to be able to depend on me, and I want to do a better job of committing to showing up for you and for myself, the career I'm perpetually building and refining. Of course, I also want to give myself compassion. I want us all to do that. There are several reasons why I didn't post, but at the core, it all comes down to fear. And I'm getting into it here not to make excuses for what I did, or rather didn't do, but to use this opportunity to explore a couple of ideas. From a logical and pragmatic standpoint, the truth is I was super uninspired, frustrated, both with my perception of the sort of fuzzy definition of my work and where I want it to go, and my writing process in general. Where I generally can write for hours on end, I was struggling to put together single paragraphs. Stringing together sentences was a painfully slow process. What's more, I doubted, as I often have, that I really have any business talking about these ideas. I don't have any certificates on my walls that validate my credibility. I don't even have any formal training. From a more macro perspective, though, I've been feeling like there are changes coming in my career, whether wholly logical in terms of what I do to make money, or more vaporous in terms of adjusting the focus or how of what I already do. I still have no real idea which of those directions it will go, or if it will play out in both contexts, or if I'll be presented with an entirely new direction. Regardless, the emotional weight of the desultory nature of my future perspective left me feeling like a disillusioned 20-year-old. What is the point? Parenthetically, I'm asking for your patience as I navigate these greater questions. While I am committed to consistently showing up for both of us, you may also notice wide variations in the content and delivery of the podcasts. I hope you can hang in there with me. As I worked through this understanding of my personal reality and the impact it had on my professional commitment, it occurred to me that this was also a fantastic opportunity to just open up and be honest about what I was going through, to share with all of you the wins and losses of my inner battle because I think they are an inherent part of our human experiences. More importantly, I think sharing our struggles is an essential part of growth. In doing so, we are opening ourselves up to learning from each other, allowing ourselves to be inspired by the ways another person navigated a similar situation. Furthermore, embracing transparency in the challenges we face in life is a profoundly effective way to bond with others. Shared experience in general draws us closer together, particularly when we're navigating difficult situations. And I think the whole world could use a little more coming togetherness. On the other side of these kinds of connections, when we step into the role of supportive friend and patient listener, we are also gifted with a rare moment in which we can see ourselves reflected back to us. We can see what kind of advice or suggestions we might offer to our loved one and take the opportunity to apply those same ideas to our own difficult situations. Perhaps the most poignant reward in these connections, though, at least in the perspective I'm taking for this particular work, is the treasure trove of growth provided in exposing our fragility, our imperfectness, our humanness. It seems to me that a lot of us battle with the idea of perfectionism. We know that perfect isn't real, that perfectionism itself can be a bigger barrier to success than doing something badly, that no one and nothing is truly, actually perfect. And yet, I struggle deeply with this idea. You know, I've talked about it before. I think it's possible you do too. And I say that because numerous times in any given week, I run across examples of other people struggling with the same idea, making excuses why they did something that wasn't actually wrong, or listing out reasons they can't do something that they do want to do, even situations as simple as a stranger giving me directions that turn out to be wrong. I mean, after all, that's where mansplaining comes from, right? Or the kind of situation that I just experienced when my climbing guide told me the hostel where I was planning to stay was way too far away. And then it turned out that it was literally less than a quarter mile from where I needed to be. He didn't actually know the place, he later confessed. And I'd wager that he didn't have intention to lie to me, but rather that he wanted to appear to know, to just have the answer. In fact, I imagine that the vast majority of men who seem to think that they are wiser or more well informed about an experience they've never had comes from a desire to be useful to us, to have all the answers to everything, all the time, to be genuinely helpful. A perspective which I can hold compassion for. Incidentally, I will also proudly say that a man's ability to say, I don't know, is way above oysters on my list of aphrodisiacs. I'm sure there's a huge discussion in there about culture and toxic masculinity and generational trauma, but that's not where I'd like to direct today's discussion. Because yes, I see it often and rather baldly in my conversations with men. But women do it too. As I've said, I can feel myself doing it. When my best friend tells me about a difficult situation she's in, I find myself groping around for reasons why it might be happening, what she might be able to do about it, and how I can help her, quote, fix whatever is bothering her. It comes from love, of course. But is it love? Is it really? My job, as her friend, is not to fix her problem. In fact, she's not asking me to. She's not even asking me to help her fix it. The context of our friendship only asks of me to hold compassion for her, believe in her, support her, which is all I could really ever do anyway. My job is to remind her that when she's feeling exposed and vulnerable and less than perfect, that she is not alone. She is not wrong or bad. She is human. As a culture, it seems to me that even as we embrace new perspectives on what a healthy body looks like, what a healthy partnership looks like, what a healthy human looks like, there's still some undercurrent of the idea that we need to be a perfect version of whatever that is, or at least be striving towards perfect. And as I've said and will say again and again in this episode, I am one of the worst offenders. I'm the kind of person that leaves a breakfast date with my friends and pedals home playing over the whole conversation in my mind to make sure I didn't talk too much or too little, that I didn't brag, that I didn't interrupt, something I do a lot and am working on. For me, and I imagine for at least some of the other beautiful humans that struggle with the idea of failure and perfection, guilt is one of the more difficult aspects to release. On the occasions when I do feel as though I dominated a conversation or told a story to a group of friends with the tainted intention of ego-based pride rather than real contribution to the conversation, there's an almost sickly feeling in my stomach. I can imagine my heart being squeezed by guilt. A wildly human emotion, of course, one that sealed me to my couch for several hours on the day I would normally have published the podcast. I know I let you down. I let myself down, and I'm genuinely sorry about that. The thing about guilt, however, is that it isn't useful. In fact, one of my very wise teachers postulated that guilt is perhaps the only human-created emotion. While our feelings of fear or excitement or sadness or worry or love have roots in the ways our animal bodies have learned to survive, guilt does literally nothing for us. Even the argument that it provides us with a moment of self-reflection on how we'd like to do or be or handle things differently doesn't really hold water, because we don't need to feel guilt to have that reflective awareness. Walking away from an experience feeling like we could have acted in another way does not require us to feel the guilt in order to create an intention to change our future behavior. We can just accept that we didn't particularly like the way we handled something, make a conscious intention not to do it that way again, and move on. Adding the guilt factor just muddies our self-reflective waters. Now we feel attacked by ourselves, and our first instinct is often to find reasons to excuse what we did, defend ourselves in front of ourselves, when perhaps the clearer path forward is just to accept that we aren't perfect and we don't have to be, and we can make adjustments if we want to. Working through this reality about my personal struggle with and toward perfection, I came to understand that in part this comes from a fear that I will be abandoned, that my friends or coworkers or boyfriend or whatever will walk away if I'm not perfect. My fear of abandonment has nurtured in me a fear of being less than perfect, and ironically, my intention to be perfect is actually super annoying to others. Gratefully, my sister and my very best friends have been so patient, and slowly I'm learning that when people actually love me, they won't leave me just because I got super over impassioned about a topic around the dinner table. An example which actually beautifully underlines my point. Well, the first one anyway. The idea that there's a tremendous value in showing our vulnerability. The people around us are actually able to love us more and more authentically when we show our imperfections, when we let them love us as messy, flawed humans. Showing our fragility, I argue, is an exercise in self-empowerment. I'm not perfect. I also love and respect myself. I know that I'm loved and respected by others, and I'm going to try again. I will be the first to admit, of course, that sometimes that's a lot easier said than done. Perhaps especially the trying again part. It can suck to have to admit that what we invested in didn't work out. It can really suck sometimes, which might make it even more embarrassing to put ourselves out there and try again. Like really try and believe it. Make others believe in it too, perhaps. But to really believe ourselves that this time it will work. We've learned, we've grown. This time it will be different because we're doing it differently. Even if we fail 100 times over, it doesn't mean that we're a failure or even that the project or idea is. There are myriad platitudes about not giving up, countless stories across time about people who were told they weren't good enough or who failed over and over again and went on to succeed. I'm not going to bore you by repeating them here because what's more important to me is the inherent wisdom in those tales. Yes, doing something over and over again and expecting a different result is touted as some version of a definition of insanity. A truth I can see in the purest context of doing exactly the same thing over and over. But rarely is that true. Basketball players that want to make the half court shot quite literally take that shot thousands of times, maybe hundreds of thousands, each time slightly changing their position, shifting their body weight, rotating their hands, changing their focus, or the focus of their mind's eye. Not to mention the reality that once they make that incredibly difficult shot, they strive to exactly replicate every minute detail over and over and over again. Making the key, of course, to just keep going. Accept the failure, release the guilt, and look for places we can refine ourselves or the process or whatever, and just do it again and again and again and again. One of my very favorite people in the world honed in on a beautiful response when I was lamenting a mistake I'd made. "Oh my God, Jackie," she said in all seriousness, "do you think they know that you're human?" I nearly spit my coffee all over her, and while I recovered, she said, "Okay, we can figure this out." I love this response for so many reasons. First of all, there was no shame of any kind, nor did she fumble around to blame circumstances or other people to excuse my mistake. In a delightfully playful way, she just reminded me that this is normal. Occasionally we fuck up. Now, what can we do to keep moving forward? Correct the situation if possible, if need be, and keep going. What's more, instead of proposing that she had the answer, as I am so easily wont to do, she simply created space for us to brainstorm solutions together. That magnificent display of support was immensely soothing and helped me in my effort to forgive myself, then to work through the situation and explore how it could be resolved, which was exactly what I needed to be able to get back to a place of believing that I could resolve it, that I could do it differently, that I could keep going and maintain real hope for future success. Which, my friends, is my final point and the true heart of my discourse here. All of that other stuff, the failure in itself and the resultant cycle of emotions, the acceptance of imperfection, the releasing of the guilt, the rallying of intention to keep going, all of that pales in comparison to the value of belief. Not just the half-assed patronizing, "well, I guess I could try it again," but real, grab it by the genitals, impassioned belief. I know I can do this. I believe there's value here in my effort. Because yes, this thing you're working on or toward serves a purpose. Your intention alone, that desire to do or give or be or change something, that has power. You can get it wrong 1,000 more times, and each and every effort will affect change in yourself and in the world at large. Every little watt of energy that you put into moving yourself forward is winning. Every little tweak you make to yourself or the project or process is moving mountains in the world of energy. Not to mention getting you one step closer on your path. The thing is, fear can be powerful. Fear that we aren't good enough or doing enough, that we aren't fulfilling our purpose or living our lives to the fullest. But ultimately, it's just fear. We can choose to be brave. We can choose to let the world see our faults and flaws and failures and give ourselves some grace. We can take immense comfort in the factual reality that every little effort we make, every little step we take is both worthwhile and effective. Period. Hard stop. And just keep going. I'm going to make the same effort to maintain faith in a future which will be supported by the efforts I'm making now, even if I can't imagine the connective path forward. No, I'm not a certified expert, but I do feel like I have been working on and studying religion and belief systems long enough to have a perspective worth sharing. Which, incidentally, is what we're all really doing anyway, sharing our knowledge and experiences and perspectives to make ourselves and our world better, happier. We are all works in progress. I'm hoping you can be patient with me as I tweak and refine my efforts. Most of all, though, I hope in sharing my process, I can be supportive of you and your processes. I hope you have a wonderful God or Goddess energy empowered week. Join us next week for another deep dive into the exploration of our humanity to uncover our divinity. Thanks for listening. If you liked this podcast, remember to subscribe and please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/Jacqueline Lene. There you'll also get access to the personal stories of the random ways daily life inspires me and all of us to keep growing. And if you'd like to dig in and do some of your own healing through self-love, check out the workshops and personal support sessions available on my website at authorjacquelinelene.com. That's author JACLYNLANAE.com.